Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back. So today we're going to talk to you about voicing your pickups or matching your pickups to your amplifier. A guy that's on my channel watches a lot of my videos. By the way, thank you, bud. He asked me to do a video about talking about matching pickups to an amplifier. Well, I'm probably going to give you the answer you didn't want to hear. There's actually no such thing. You don't actually match pickups to an amplifier. What you do is you find yourself a guitar that you really love and an amplifier that you really love that's going to give you the sound that you're after, okay? When we go shopping for new gear, as I do pretty much on a weekly basis all the time, sometimes I don't come home with anything. Most of the time I do, though. Anyways, so to me, for a lot of years, I had to put up with low-end stuff, okay? And I gradually started to get better and better equipment over the years. It's all about money, right? And I had this mindset that I couldn't afford the stuff I really wanted. And I had the wrong mindset. A guy told me once at what used to be Music City, which is now Long McQuaid in North Bay, he said, you can afford any guitar you want. He said, you want a $5,000 guitar? You can afford it. $10,000? You can afford it. $6,000? $2,000? You can afford it. You want a really nice, expensive amp and all these cool boutique pedals? You can afford it. And I'm like, not on my wages, I can't. He says, that's the wrong thinking. You can afford it. Sure, you might have to save some money or put it on layaway. Or if the company offers financing, you can definitely get it that way as long as you can afford the monthly payment. So then you can get everything you need. So then I started to think about this for a while. And I thought, well, I got a really good axe, like my electric with my Cort X2. And, it took me a while. I got that thing paid for, and I bought it, and I've had other guitars too. But it's been my go-to guitar for a long, long time. So I got my Les Paul and started modifying my Les Paul. Now I adore my Les Paul. And it's not quite done yet. It's just about done, though. Anyways, I've since changed pickups in the Cort, and the pickups I put in are actually Alnico 5s. But they're a different kind of pickup than what was already in it for the Alnico 5s, because they're not all the same, okay? Either way, we have a guitar, and now we need an amp. We need an amp that's going to give us the kind of sound we want to hear and can appreciate hearing. Like, I love playing acoustic guitar. I really do, because most of the music I write is on acoustic. Especially stuff that I'm singing. Stuff I'm not, I do that on an electric guitar, and I play some pretty headbanger stuff. But anyways, so I need an amp, and I've always been in search for an amp. And, some things can surprise you. A small little amp might be just your ticket for what you need. Or you might need a big amp. Or you need a tiny little amp with a really big cabinet, like what's behind me. The Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister 18 head is an 18-watt all-tube head. It is sitting on my Marshall 4x12 cab, so we've got 4 12-inch speakers in that sucker, fair-sized cabinet, lots of air space for volume to move around, and it's a sealed cab too, so it does have some restrictions to it, which could be actually a good thing, because an open cabinet is much, much more louder than a closed cab is. And a closed cab is only going to tolerate so much frequencies at the low and mid end before it starts to sound like crap. So you need to open the cab at that point. Some guys actually just take the back cover off and run it that way. Other guys, they cut half the back off. One of my struggles was with the Fender Mustang amps. Great little amps. I actually used a pair of them as mainly monitors for a long time on my mixing board until I got my YSM8 studio monitors. But they're a pretty decent little amp, but they're closed back too, so they do have limitations at their wattage levels even still, because even at a certain volume level, those tones sound horrifying at a loud level with that amp. Now, if you were to cut the back, like make a 4-inch space or half the back off, you're going to get probably a much better sound at the higher volumes, because now things aren't being compressed in and held tight. And because it's not like they're ported, or I think they may have been ported, but A ported cab is actually better than an unported cab. But unported, you're going to have like a vacuum in there that just doesn't want to let your speaker move at all. So it's going to produce a certain type of sound with actually certain speakers. You got your Celestions, your Greenbacks, and so on. These speakers all have different voicing to them. And you could still use, like, say, Greenbacks in place of Celestions and get a really nice sound out of them in the same cabinet without modifying the cabinet even. Okay, and if it's a closed cab, completely no ports, you might want to close off the ports to get a different sound. There's a lot of tweaks that musicians do that many people don't realize in order for them to get the sound and tones they have. I'm still fighting to try and get Angus Young's tone, even with my Boss Katana and any of my guitars. But I know I won't get it. Why? Because he uses Vox amps. He doesn't use Marshall. He doesn't use a Boss. He uses Vox. And his Vox amps are, of course, tube amps. And he has them at specific settings, and that's where they stay, at a specific volume level. And then, of course, they're mic'd up from there, right? And so he gets a very unique tone for all of the music that he plays with AC/DC. And it's very hard to replicate that by trying to use a patch to do it and play it through a Katana or even a Hughes and Kettner head. It's not going to work out right, This is where you got to actually have the guy's gear, but he ain't going to let you have his gear. And getting the same amp ain't going to work for you either, because having the fact that nothing's built equal, every single guitar in this world of the same model, the intonations will never be the same on any of them, okay? The string heights will never be precisely and exactly the same, okay? You can get plus or minus with your eyeballs, but that's about it, okay? And even under machinery is only going to be able to duplicate things to a certain point, because what happens is, okay, I want it here, but now because of the way this thing's built and the things with the wood and everything else, well, now the neck has to be slightly shimmed a little bit in order to do this, and you add a shim in there. Well, that doesn't really change your tone, but it does alter sustain levels, that I will say. Sustain has to do with your pickups. It does have a bit to do with your wood. Tone wood is kind of a myth to a certain percentage, I would say, with solid body electric guitars. It really doesn't exist, but it kind of has a very minuscule part in it. But tone wood, there really is no such thing as actual tone wood. There are different types of wood that look great, are more expensive than others, because it takes a lot more to finish that kind of a wood to get the specific finish on it than it would with a lower grade wood. Okay, and sometimes you can get a less work with higher grade wood than with lower grade too. It kind of works both ways. But you'll never actually see two guitars ever exactly the same. They may look it to your naked eye. The settings may look the same, but they're not. Even the pickup heights, there's minuscule differences. And one little minuscule move, believe me, it changes the tone, and even I can hear it. Okay? And given that most guitar players are generally deaf, I'm not, because I haven't been subjected to being a touring musician where I'm cranking the crap out of everything all the time. So I get to retain my hearing, where most guitar players out there that are touring musicians and studio musicians and that, they're somewhat getting, their hearing should be checked, you know what I mean? Because we don't believe in hearing protection. Why? Because then we wouldn't hear stuff the way we need to hear it if we had things stuck in our head. But we're all in search of a tone regardless, and a sound. And I think what's the most important is to find your own sound, something that appeals to you and your nature, your true nature. Okay? At heart, I like quiet worship music, and that's mostly what I write is worship music. Now, I do like some hyper worship music too. I like all forms of worship music. But I do play and love the most very quiet stuff, okay, which is kind of funny coming from a guy like me who tends to do some pretty crazy videos on YouTube. But that being said, I do like a lot of varieties of music. But when it comes to my own sound and my own pieces I create and write, that's different, and I need that sound in my equipment available to me so that I can produce that stuff the way I want it to be able to be heard. Okay, not just by me, but by others. So that is your priority. And anything else above that is kind of like, I'm going to copy this song or copy that song as best as I possibly can play it and dial in the settings, right? Now, sometimes it's not the equipment that you bought, okay? Because when you went to the music store, you got out a guitar off the rack, you plugged into a Mesa Boogie or a Marshall Code 50 or whatever, okay? And you really appreciated the sound of the two together, and that's why you bought it, right? So then when you get it home and you stick it in your 11 by 10 room like mine with guitars everywhere and other equipment everywhere, and that thing doesn't sound the same. You can empty this room. It ain't going to sound the same as it did in the store. Why? Because where that amp was placed in the store, where the sound was hitting in the store against other instruments, etc., the size of the area, the volume at which you can get away with playing things at. And I know I'm actually bad for cranking things up a little bit when I go to Long McQuaid, and sometimes I actually turn it down a little bit. But they do let you crank things up a bit. So anyway, you're going to find a huge difference, and some people get disappointed with this. Well, maybe you should think about using the EQ on the amplifier. I mean, after all, it's what you thought was awesome when you bought it, so now you need to adjust it and EQ the amp to your room. See, what you're using the EQ for is not just about shaping sound or tone to play a song, it's also EQing it to your room surroundings so that you don't get too much shimmer and treble, or, unless of course that's what you're after, or way too much bass. And guitar amps don't produce much bass as it is, but they can be pushed and they can be made to throw out some serious bass when necessary. So finding your own tone, a huge thing. But yes, sometimes a pickup change is in order, but most of the time you'll find that if you take the time with your amp and your guitar, you can dial in what you're after. But even if you can't, it may be that you need a different amp. I look at myself in all the gear I've had over the years, and especially in the last 2 years, I've gone through a crap load of gear, right? New and used stuff. And I've been searching for that sound and tone that I really need, and I'm really after for my own stuff and for also, yes, copying other people's stuff. So I get the best of both worlds. So I settled on the Boss Katana 100 1x12. I used the little tiny kickstand on it because it makes a huge impact even in a small room, even though it's only like 1 inch. But it tilts it, and that's the important thing. It alters the frequencies going out and the sound going out. And you don't need much tilt to do that. Some guys think you got to tilt it like this, and it's like, no. Anyways, whatever. People have their thing. And of course, I've got my Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister 18 amp. And it's an all-tube amp, and it's sitting on a Marshall 4x12. Now, within certain ranges, I really like the Marshall 4x12 on there. Otherwise, there are other parts of me that are saying, I really need something different, and I don't want to cut open the back on it and take a chunk out of the back just to create more airflow and change the tone of the cabinet. And I don't feel like changing the speakers, because chick-ching, baby! And it has Celestions in it anyways, which are great speakers. Greenbacks are also awesome, too. And there's many other types of speakers out there, too. Just changing your speaker in your amp may be all that's needed, too. You know, think about it. You know, if you change just the speaker, that's a huge impact on your sound. Huge. Brand of strings and gauge of strings you choose for your guitar completely alters the sound of your guitar. Okay? So this is where tone width is a very minuscule effect over anything. Now, there's a lot of fight about this one too, but in my experience, bolt-on neck does have more sustain than a set neck or glued-on neck. All right? Which one do I prefer? Both. Because it depends on what I'm playing, how much sustain I really am after. Besides, you can only sustain a note for so long, and then you sound like crap on stage because everybody else is playing ahead of you. You have just destroyed the song. So, does it really matter if it's a bolt-on or a set neck? No. That's a preference thing, okay? Sustain makes no difference if one really sustains longer than the other because you're only able, under the laws of music and physics and everything else, you're only allowed to hold a note for so long before you're the one wrecking the song. So any guitar can pull off enough sustain to hold the note more than long enough on any song pretty much out there that I can think of anyways. Unless you're a unique person that wants a sustained note for 10 minutes, well, hey, get a sustainer pedal and feedback it. Anyhow, so changing a speaker can do the trick for you. Now, I'm going to give you guys a bit of an example here of voicing of amps, because amps are not voiced the same as every speaker is not voiced the same regardless of how close it's made to the next one. Even the 4 speakers sitting in this cabinet, they're all the exact same speakers. They're apparently the same, which is crap, okay? They're manufactured by mankind, therefore not perfect, and they're not equally voiced to each other in the long haul, okay? There are differences. Now, most people can't hear the difference, and they don't think about it because they've never been told this until now. So now you're going to be psychologically screwed up, and you're welcome, because you know what? There's so much information that is not being told to all of us in life about things, right? But there are those of us who are more awake and see and hear all these differences, and we know, right, that even no 2 guitars are exactly the same. Even if they have the same wood body, the same wood neck, the same fingerboard, appear to look like the same frets. I can go into metallurgy too and really screw your heads up pretty bad, but we're not going to do that because we don't have 10 hours to go through this or more. So I'm going to go with the Hughes and Kettner. Now I'm going raw, straight in, no effects board, everything's bypassed. I'm using the DI out on the Hughes and Kettner into my mixing board. And the same when we use the Katana amp, it's going to be the natural sound of that amp with 0 effects turned on. We're going to plug directly into the amp. It's going through its line out, okay, direct into the DI box. Okay, I have a DI box for it. So each one has a DI in the way. Now, one thing I will tell you about my Strat is my hottest pickup is in the neck. It's not in the bridge where it commonly is. Okay, so I kind of do things a little bit differently, and I got what I was after for the sound I wanted out of my Strat. Now this is just the voicing of just the amplifier. Okay, speakers are different. We'll do another video where we'll show the speakers going raw, no mixing board console or any of that crap. Just straight in with my camera, right to the from the amps with their speakers. That's bridge. Pretty chimey, considering that's supposed to be the lower output pickup. Okay, middle and bridge. Now just the middle. Middle and neck. And the neck. Now that's the voicing of the Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister 18 and what its amplifier actually sounds like. Okay, that's the voicing of the amp. Now let's move over to the Katana. Now the settings on the bass, mid, and treble are all the same on both amps. So here's the Katana. Start out at the bridge. Now this tone really makes me fall in love with my Strat. I really love this tone. We're in bridge and middle. Middle position. Middle and neck. Neck only. Now, that's a real huge night and day with the exact same guitar. Now, with my Strat, I changed from the Alnico 5 pickups to a set of vintage wound Alnico 4s, okay, that I got from China for like 14 bucks. That's all these pickups cost me for all three with covers. So, I like these pickups better than ones that Fender put in for Alnico 5s. So, I'll do a video in probably a day or two, a couple of days from now, and I'll let you hear the same exact guitar with the same settings, except now you're going to hear the speakers, okay? Now, the Katana doesn't support a cab, so I can't let you hear the Marshall cab on it. That's the way it goes. But you're going to hear what the differences are. But I do have a 8-inch cab that used to be a subwoofer that I put an 8-inch 8-ohm speaker in, and we'll hook that into the Hughes. Now, the Katana 100 I have has a 12-inch. The Marshall has, and it's its own Katana speaker, and the Marshall has 4 12-inch Celestion speakers in it. So, now, the Katana is also a 100-watt amp, and the Hughes and Kettner is a 18-watt amp. The Hughes and Kettner is an all-tube. The Katana is a solid state. Does it matter? Absolutely not. Some people just prefer tube because it's the old way, and that's what we had at one point, and that was it. Until solid state came around, then we've got best. And now we have solid state amps that actually, I'm sorry to say it to you tube fans, they kick ass over anything tube, okay? But we still all have our preferences in life, and I do like tube amps, okay, now that I have a full tube amp. I even had a hybrid one. I had a Micro Dark, and I actually still want to get the Micro Terror and a matched cab for it just because. But, you know, the tube amps are really nice. There is clean to them, but there's also a bit of noise that I find that, well, I don't personally like it the best in the tubes, but that's the way tubes are. Whereas the solid state is so pure and clean. I love it. But also keep in mind too, I like using the Hughes, and it for a tube amp and for how it actually does sound, it does a really good job with a lot of the stuff I like to play, which is why I have it. You know, I do at times still, I will admit guilty, buy stuff just to buy it, just to show you guys on YouTube and to do reviews for you, because I like to help people out with the most information I possibly can, and because this is the kind of guy I am. But anything that I keep is stuff that I really need and I really want, okay, at the same time. But the biggest thing is the need. I have all these guitars because I need every single one of them in order to produce the music in the sounds that I'm after. It would be the same thing as if we take, well, here, let's do something for you. Now, this is my Martin OMCX 1KE, and you're only going to be able to hear the sound through the mic, unfortunately, because I don't want to plug it in because that's the pickup more than the guitar itself. Where did my... Oh, I need a pick. We'll use the same pick, too, on both guitars. So this is a cutaway acoustic electric, all right? let me move this mic down, so sorry for the noise. Now I'm going to grab my new little baby Taylor. I have one more example to show you. Now, this is my Chord X2, and it's a Venetian cutaway like the Martin, and very similar in size, except it has an arch back where the Martin doesn't. Try and do this the same way. Again, apologies for moving the mic around and making noise. Okay, now the white chord obviously is right-handed, and I'm still working on playing right-handed. But anyways, you get the idea. Each one has its own voice, its own sound, its own feel, everything, right? And every guitar is like that. They're different. So as far as this whole deal goes with matching even the ohms of a pickup to an amp, that doesn't happen, okay? There is no matching ohms of a pickup to an amp. The amp doesn't care what pickups are in your guitar. Your setup of your guitar, the type of pickups you have, the winds on the pickup, the strength of the magnets on the pickup, etc., that's a main sound that is going to always be the sound of that guitar. What you need to do is find out what amp you like best for the reproduction purposes of that guitar in sound and tone, what you're after. So your search for pickups has some merit, I will agree, because the Alnico 4s sound much better to me than Alnico 5s, where a lot of guys actually prefer the Alnico 5 pickups, even in a humbucker. But the thing is, not all Alnico 5s are going to be the same amount of windings. They're not going to be the same material being used, the same magnets, especially different manufacturers. But even from the same manufacturer, the magnets are created out of pull pieces or pieces of rod that get magnetized. And so they each have a magnetic field to them, which assists in being the electrical area to help charge up the coil. So when you strum your guitar, that electrical signal is going and through the coil, and it's producing a sound. You know, and so anyways, everything's unique, right? But there are hundreds of choices of pickups, but that's all we have. We don't have an unlimited amount of pickup voicings out there because there's only so many ways you can wind a pickup. You know, I mean, that's the way it is. And there's also so many types of wire that we have accessible that's used in pickups. Maybe if we want to make a better change, maybe we should be using unconventional wire for pickups for making the coils with instead of what's always been used, which is that very, very thin, scary thin stuff. Okay, maybe go to something a little bit thicker and doing the same amount of winds. Now we might be able to create another 400 or 500 different types of voicings for pickups, which will be great for the marketing and the manufacturers of those pickups because they're going to make a boatload of money out of us. But on the other hand, they might actually not make a dime out of us because those kind of pickups may actually sound crappy. But the only way to know is to make a few sets and see what actually happens. That's part of science and experimenting, is it not? You know, try it, and then if you like it, cool. If you don't, well, guess what? That sucked. So anyways, I'm really hoping this was an informative video. I'm sorry it took so long, but to try and explain a lot of this stuff does take a little bit, and I could never possibly do all this in one video because, yeah, the bandwidth would just get on my internet, and I'd be like, oh, God, now I got a bigger bill to pay. But at the same time, you guys would be awfully bored. So a half an hour, just over a half-hour mark, I think is more than enough for you guys to handle and deal with right now. If you want to hear more on this subject or other subjects in relation to audio stuff, let me know, because I do have a pretty good knowledge base when it comes to all this audio stuff, guitar gear, mixing equipment, blah, blah, blah. Of course, a lot of this stuff is already on my channel too, so before asking, just go search my channel to see if you can find kind of like what you're after for any info. And if you don't find it at all, just ask me and I'll see what I can pull off for you for a video, just like I did for the one who requested this one. Hopefully, by the way, Bud, you weren't too disappointed at the answer, but, you know, it is kind of you don't match your pickups to an amp. It's in here, it's in here. It's what you want to be able to hear and express through your music. That's how you find your tone. And sometimes, yes, you do have to change to a different pickup. But I want to say this to everybody. Stop taking everybody's advice on what is the best pickup, what is the best amp, what is the best guitar, because none of that crap is real. It's just garbage. We all have preferences. Yes, some people... There's a lot of people that like Texas Specials. There's a lot of guys that like DiMaggio Super Distortions or Widowmaker or whatever the names of half these pickups are out there nowadays. Okay? That's a preference. It doesn't mean it's going to be your preference. And, you know, when you're watching a YouTube video, I would put more faith and trust in videos. And I'm not building myself up here, but I am the kind of guy who does show it straight up and out. I don't manipulate stuff or over process things and alter it before I upload it to make it sound really cool, like a lot of companies will tend to do, which we all know. Well, hopefully we all know, because I had a problem once with a pedal that actually ended up buying two of them to try and get the sounds. Was the booster pedal from Outlaw Effects as well as the 5 o'clock fuzz, and I could never every amp I've tried, and I went through a lot of gear in the last 2 years. You guys know that, and I had those pedals. I ended up getting rid of those pedals because of the frustration, because I could never even come close to that tone. No, and I even looked at his settings on the pedals. I left the pedals at those settings. I tried different amps and different guitars and different this and different that and all this stuff, which is what a lot of us do, and it costs a lot of money to do all that stuff, to in the end find out, guess what? It doesn't exist because it was over-processed and altered and manipulated at the other end and to make it sound really awesome, which it sucked in the end. So there you go. I mean, that's just how it goes. So anyways, now I have a GT1000 pedal board that, as far as I'm concerned, at this point in stage, it's the end-all be-all in pedal boards, because you can manipulate this thing any way you want for arranging your effects. You can add multiple delays, multiple EQs, put them anywhere you want, put your FX pedals anywhere you want, your mod pedals go anywhere you want. You can combine stuff, make up your own patches any way you see fit, which is cool, right? We can't even do that much stuff with the Kettner amps, and the Kettner amps are still awesome, outstanding amps. Anyways, thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and got a lot of information out of it. I had fun doing this video. I have fun doing all my videos for you guys. So till next time, rock on. Isn't that how we do it? Yeah. Let's double that. Yeah. All right. Catch you guys later. Keep rocking.